When the Ace of Swords appears, you might find yourself at one of those breakthrough moments when everything suddenly makes sense, perhaps seeing through confusion that has clouded your thinking for months, recognizing patterns that were always there but somehow remained invisible until now. Sometimes this card arrives when we're ready to think new thoughts, when old mental frameworks have become too small to hold what we're learning about ourselves, about others, about how life actually works beneath the stories we tell about how it should work. This card often whispers of truths that want to be spoken, the recognition that clarity unused becomes burden rather than blessing, that insight hoarded serves no one. Perhaps you're being called to say something difficult but necessary, to share observations that might challenge others' comfort but could serve their growth, to speak from your authentic understanding rather than from what you think people want to hear. Sometimes the Ace of Swords speaks to mental courage that's ready to emerge. Maybe you're prepared to question beliefs you've inherited without examination, to think for yourself even when thinking for yourself leads to conclusions that separate you from consensus. There's something here about intellectual independence, the willingness to follow logic and evidence wherever they lead, even when they lead away from popular opinions or inherited assumptions. The crown suggests that what you're receiving has divine support. Perhaps the insights arriving feel larger than your individual perspective, connected to wisdom that transcends personal experience. This card often appears when we're ready to serve truth, rather than demanding that truth serve our preferences, when we're prepared to be messengers rather than authors of what needs to be communicated. The double edge reminds us that clarity cuts through illusion regardless of whether we find the revealed truth convenient. Maybe you're discovering that seeing clearly sometimes means seeing things you'd rather not see, understanding dynamics you'd prefer to ignore. Sometimes the Ace of Swords arrives when we're ready to prefer difficult truth to comforting fiction, when we understand that building our lives on accurate information serves us better than building them on wishful thinking. This card frequently appears when mental fog begins lifting, perhaps after periods of confusion, indecision, or feeling mentally scattered. You're experiencing the relief of thoughts that organize themselves naturally around clear principles. The mountain peaks suggest that this clarity comes from rising above emotional reactivity to see situations from more objective perspective, when we stop taking things personally enough to think about them accurately. There's something here about the power of precision. The Ace of Swords often arrives when we're ready to use language more carefully, to think more rigorously, to distinguish between what we know and what we assume. Perhaps you're developing capacity for the kind of mental discipline that cuts through vague generalities to reach specific, actionable understanding. When you discover that clarity serves not just comprehension, but effective action. The radiating light speaks to influence that extends beyond immediate application. Maybe the understanding you're receiving wants to be shared, wants to become foundation for decisions that affect not just you, but others who look to your judgment. Sometimes this card appears when we're ready to trust our own thinking enough to let it guide important choices, when we've developed enough confidence in our ability to see clearly that we're willing to act on what we see even when others can't see it yet themselves.
This card interpretation comes from my new book, where I explore all 78 cards as mirrors for the human experience. If you'd like to continue this conversation with the complete deck, you'll find it linked in the description.